The footsteps moving back and forth in the hallway at midnight were real, and the ringing of that unplugged phone inside the empty room was not something I imagined. During my freshman year of college, I moved into the girls' dorm. On our floor, most of the rooms were filled with art students, with only a few of us PE students mixed in. And near the end of the hallway, closer to the shower room, there were 3 empty rooms. We never really paid much attention to those empty rooms, but whenever we passed by, the air near them always felt colder than the rest of the hallway. It was close to midterms, and I stayed up late working on an assignment. The room was quiet. My roommates were already asleep. By the time I turned off my computer, it was almost 1 a.m. I grabbed my pajamas and towel, getting ready to take a shower. At that hour, the hallway was dark, with only the emergency lights still on. Somehow, the hallway felt darker than usual. Just as I was getting close to the shower room, I suddenly heard someone crying. It was very quiet, not loud crying, more like someone trying to hold it in. Soft, broken sobs. The sound seemed to be coming from inside the shower room. I stood there and listened for a few seconds. My first thought was that maybe some girl was hiding in the shower room, crying. But for some reason, the crying sounded close, yet not exactly like it was coming from anyone's stall. It felt like the sound was trapped in the air, slowly leaking out. At that moment, a voice came into my mind. Forget it. Go back to the room. Right now. I didn't walk any further. I didn't ask who was there. I just quietly turned around and went back to my room. That night, I hid under the blanket, not daring to pull it down. It felt like that crying was still stuck beside my ear. The next morning, I didn't mention it to anyone. I didn't want people to think I was crazy or that I had imagined the whole thing. So I pretended nothing had happened. And I kept telling myself that too. But later, I realized that was only the beginning. One night, close to midnight, a phone kept ringing from the end of the hallway. Back then, this was long before cell phones were common. They were still considered a luxury that most students couldn't afford. So having a landline phone in every dorm room already felt like something special. Every evening after class, the landline phones would start ringing, one after another. So at first, no one paid much attention. But this phone kept ringing. Ring, 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 ring. Again and again. It wouldn't stop. Eventually, girls from the other rooms started coming their doors and coming out to check. We all looked at each other, trying to figure out where the ringing was coming from. It's not my room. Not mine either. Not here. The phone kept ringing. Ring, 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 ring. Finally, someone got irritated and said, "Can someone please pick up that damn phone?" That was when we realized the sound was coming from the very end of the hallway, from those 3 empty rooms. The other girls and I walked down the hallway toward the empty room, just to confirm where the sound was coming from. Someone muttered, "We need to unplug that phone line." The closer we got, the clearer the ringing became. Ring, 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 ring. It was coming from behind one of the empty room doors. We thought the room would be locked, but one of the girls turned the doorknob and realized it wasn't locked. The door opened with a soft creak. Inside, the room was empty, just an empty desk. And on top of it, an old landline phone. The phone was still ringing. We stood at the doorway. None of us wanted to be the first one to go in, but it kept ringing. The sound was irritating. Finally, I walked inside. I reached out to pick up the phone. The moment my hand touched it, the ringing stopped. The whole room suddenly went silent. I forced myself to pick up the phone. "Hello?" No sound. I asked again, more quietly. Hello? Still nothing. That was when the girl standing next to me suddenly whispered, "Wait." Her voice was very soft, but I still remember the tone of it. She said, "This phone isn't even plugged in." I looked down. The phone cord was hanging off the side of the desk. It wasn't plugged into any outlet at all. For 1 second, none of us moved. No one is making any sounds. We all just freeze. Then, I don't even know who moved first. All three of us ran out of that room at the same time. That night, none of us went back to check, and no one dared to talk about that phone again. But it didn't end there. After that, strange things kept happening in the dorm. Sometimes, in the middle of the night, we would hear footsteps slowly moving back and forth in the hallway, from one end of the hall to the other, then slowly back again, over and over, non-stop. At first we thought it was just some girl walking around at night, making noise when everyone else was trying to sleep. But the footsteps kept going until we couldn't take it anymore. We got up, opened the door, and wanted to see who was being so inconsiderate in the middle of the night. But when the door opened, there was no one outside. There were also a few nights when, in the middle of the night, I could vaguely feel someone standing beside my bed. I couldn't see anything clearly, but the feeling was strong, like someone was standing right next to me, staring at me. I couldn't move. I couldn't open my eyes. All I could do was hide my head under the blanket. I stayed like that until morning. Since then, I started getting tired very easily. I didn't feel like doing anything. I just felt lazy and drained all the time. No matter how much I slept, I never felt rested. Then one afternoon, during a break from team practice, a group of us were just chilling together and chatting. Somehow, I casually brought up the strange things that had been happening in our dorm. I mentioned the crying from the shower room at night. The footsteps are moving back and forth in the hallway, and the phone ringing from the empty room at the end of the hall, even though it wasn't plugged in. The senior who had just been hanging out and laughing with us suddenly went quiet. She looked at me and said, "Why are you living on the 3rd floor? Aren't the PE girls supposed to be on the 5th floor?" That was when she lowered her voice and told us something had happened there before. She said that many years ago, a girl had ended her life in one of those 3 empty rooms. But the school didn't want students to know exactly which room it was, so they left all 3 rooms near the shower room empty. Those rooms had been closed for a long time. No students were allowed to live there. They had only reopened a couple of years before we moved in. And before reopening them, the school even held a ceremony, inviting monks to perform a ritual and bless the dorm. Later, some people said the school may have thought PE girls had stronger energy, so they arranged for us to live on that floor. I don't know if those rumors were true, but deep down, I knew. The crying I heard from the shower room that night was real. The footsteps moving back and forth in the hallway at midnight were real, and the ringing of that unplugged phone inside the empty room was not something I imagined.